Everybody, welcome back to the channel, and in this video we are going to be building this lovely looking penguin here, and we are going to be doing so using CSS. And that's because this penguin here loves CSS. Now, as you can see, this penguin is standing on a ground with the sky background and a beautiful bright yellow sun here, as well as some mountain looking figures here. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is going to build it through a series of 104 steps. And so let's get started. Okay, so like we've been doing, as always, we want to start our project by declaring our doc type. And this is going to tell the browser the kind of document we want it to read, in this case, HTML. Also, let's add our HTML element like so, and we want to set the language attribute to English like so. After that, we want to add both a head element and also we want to add a body element as well. Let me add a body element like so. Okay, now we want to give it the head element. We want to give it an appropriate meta. So first, let's give it a char set attribute, which we are going to set to UTF-8. And let's also give it another meta for the viewport. So we'll say meta, and then let's give it a name attribute, which we are going to set to viewport. And the content is going to be width equal to device width. Let's set the initial scale to 1.0 like so. All right, now we have our head element with some meta tags in there. We also want to add a title element as well. So let's add a title element, and the text we want to give the title element, for now let's just say penguin. And then we also want to link your style sheet to the page. So this is our style sheet. So let's link it using the link element, and let's say rel. Let's give it a value of style sheet. Let's give it an href attribute with a value of styles.css. Okay, so to test whether our link is working properly, I'm going to say body, and then let me give it a background color of blue. Great, so we have been able to successfully link our CSS to our HTML. Okay, so that will be it for step 1. Let's continue. All right, next up, we want to target the body element and set the background to a linear gradient. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is to first target the body element. Let's say background, and let's give it a value of linear gradient. Then what we want to do is we want to give it a value of 45 degrees, and then the first color is going to be this RGB value here. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it here like so, and then I will also copy this RGB value, which is going to be the second, and I'll paste it like so. All right, so as you can see, we have our gradient, and it moves at an angle of 45 degrees. So it starts from this corner here and moves all the way here. Okay, now let's normalize the page's sizing by removing the body element margin and padding. So we're just going to say margin 0 is also give it a padding of 0 as well. Nice. Now the next thing we want to do is want to normalize your page by setting its width to 100%. So let's give it a width of 100%. Let's also give it a height of 100 view height, like so. Next up, we want to remove both the horizontal and vertical scroll bars. So we don't want to have any horizontal scroll bars or vertical scroll bars. And we are supposed to do that using only one property. So the way we're going to do that is to use the overflow property. And let's give it a value of hidden. Okay. All right. Now, within the body element, we want to add a div. So let's add a div within the body element. And then let's give this div a class attribute with a value of, ground, like so. Then let's target the ground element, or the element with the ground class. Let's set its width to take up the full width of the viewport. So we're going to do 100 view width, and let's give it a height of 400 pixels. Okay. Now we want to set the ground element, or want to give the ground element a background with a linear gradient. So let's say background. Let's give it a linear gradient. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is the angle at which we want the gradient to work. So in this case, we want it to be a 90-degree gradient. So 90-degree, comma. Then the first color, or the starting color, will be this RGB value here. Let me just copy and paste it, bring my comma. Then I'm also going to copy the second color and paste it here, like so. Okay, so now as you can see, we have our ground here, which has been added to our page. Nice. Now, as the ground elements will be tiered in the stacking context of the page layout, we want to set its z-index to 3. So now, when we come back to our final page, the ground element is going to be on top of some elements. For example, as you can see, it is on top of this shape here and this one as well. So the way we're going to handle that is to set the z-index, okay, and want to give the z-index a value of 3. Wait. Okay, we're also supposed to give it a position, and the position is going to have a value of absolute, like so. All right, now for step 10, above the ground element, or the div with a ground class, we want to add a new div, and this new div is supposed to have a class attribute with a value of penguin. Next up, let's take the penguin element and set its width and height to 300 pixels. So let's target the penguin element by saying .penguin. Let's give it a width of 300 pixels, a height of 300 pixels as well. Now, we want to use the margin property to horizontally center the penguin element. So, and also set the margin top to 75 pixels. So I'm just going to say margin. Let's just say auto, and let's specify the margin for the margin top, and let's give it a 75 pixels. So what this will do is that this will set margin for all sides as auto, which means margin left and margin right will both be auto, and then margin top will be 75. Now when margin left and margin right are both auto, it means our element is going to be centered. Okay. Now let's create some scenery in the background. You add 2 mountains. So let's go to our final page, and as you can see, we have one mountain here and we have another one here. So that's what we are talking about. So let's add the first mountain, or the left mountain. So above the penguin element, which we have here, we want to add a div, and this new div is going to have a class with a value of left mountain, like so. Okay, now let's target the left mountain and style it appropriately. So you're going to say left mountain. First, let's set its width to 300 pixels. Same for the height as well, is also going to have a value of 300 pixels. And then let's set the background. So for the background, we want it to be a linear gradient. And this linear gradient is going to start at this RGB value here. So I'm going to copy the color value. And then let me bring my closing bracket. It's going to end at this color right here. So let me add it here like so. Okay, now as you can see, we have our mountain, but we need to tilt it because our mountain here is not a square, it's tilted. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is to, okay, first let's prevent the mountain from pushing the ground element. So we're going to adjust its position to prevent it from taking up space in the page layout. Okay, so we'll say position relative. Oh wait, so you should give the left mountain a position of absolute. Okay, so instead of relative, it should be position absolute. All right, now to make the mountains look like a mountain, you can use the skew transform function. And this skew function or skew transform function takes 2 arguments. The first is the angle to share the x-axis by, and the second is for the y-axis. So use the transform property to skew the mountain by 0 degrees on the x-axis and 44 degrees on the y-axis. So you're going to say transform, and we'll say skew, bring our bracket and give it 2 values. So the first is for the x-axis, is going to be 0. The second is for the y-axis, is going to be 44 degrees. Okay, now as you can see, our mountain is skewed, and that's how we want it to be. All right, so moving on, we want to set the stack level of the mountain element such that it remains directly behind the ground element. Okay, so we are going to use the z index for it. Remember, we set the z index for the ground to be 3. Okay, there's the ground element, and then it has a z index of 3. So for us to stack this left mountain behind the ground element, we are going to give it a z index that is less than 3. So we'll use 2 for it. Okay, now if I give it a z index of 4, you see it's appearing on top of the ground. But if I give it a z index of 2, which is less than the 3 that the ground has, it hides behind the ground layer. Okay, so that's how the z index works. The element with the higher z index will always appear on top. To overlap the mountain and ground elements better, give the mountain a margin top of 100 pixels. So let's give it a margin top of 100 pixels. Okay, to push it from the top, let's also give the ground element, which we have right here, want to give it a margin top of -58. Margin top with a value of -58 pixels. So this will move it upwards. Okay, now as you can see, our ground is elevated and our mountain is behind our ground element nicely. Now for 19, we want to give the effect of a mountain ridge, so we need to add another mountain to it. So as you can see here in our final image, we have the first mountain here and we have another mountain behind it. So that mountain, we are going to do it by creating a new div. So let's create it here immediately after the left mountain. And we are going to give this one a class with an attribute of back mountain. Okay, and then let's start adding some style to it. So first, let's target it by saying dot back mountain. Bring our curly braces and let's say background. Let's work on the width and height first. So width will be 300 pixels. Height is also going to be 300 pixels. Background, we want to set it to a linear gradient. The first color or the starting color is going to be this RGB value here. I'll just copy and paste it. And then the ending color is going to be this one right here. I'll also just copy and paste it. Okay, so now as you can see, we have our second mountain created here, but it's making this look like a mess, so there's something going on. We need to fix it. Yeah, but for now we'll end this video here. So in this video, we've looked at steps 1 all the way to 20, and in the next video we are going to continue with step 21 and hopefully end our way to 40. All right, so see you in the next one.